Hello and welcome to the MLB DFS on the RotoRadar Podcast. My name is Joshua Riemer. I'm joined by none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Jared Block. Jared, how are you doing on this fantastic Wednesday afternoon?
Doing well. What a night last night for your Lakers. We were just talking about that before the show. Obviously, I think that we can summarize yesterday by saying, man, what a shit show for the MLB slate. But,
Yeah.
it is what it is, man. Like, Brown underperformed, 5 walks and 1 1/3 innings. That tells you everything you need to know. And my Brewers happen to be ice cold, and so we'll talk to you guys about what that means for today's slate. The biggest thing in baseball is that any day could be brand new and different and a clean slate. So that's the beauty of it, and we have a lot of stuff to talk about today.
Yes, certainly do. You have those bad days sometimes where none of the right calls go right. I kind of talked about it. I said that either Kopech was going to strike out everyone or we were going to get some really big hits from our guys. And sadly, Kopech ended up striking out everyone, even the Keplers of the world. So sometimes that's how the cookie crumbles. And sadly, we didn't get the win last night. But we move on, and we move on to a better slate that I like a lot. I'm excited to talk to you about, and we can dive straight into, man.
Yeah, just want to again state how the volatility of things can change on a nightly basis, and we're going to go right back to the well on a lot of the stuff that we talked about yesterday. Thankfully, not too much to talk about in terms of weather today, but we do have to cover it on the first game of the slate. So I do want your insight on that because I know you follow this closer. You follow everything really close, but this one's obviously near and dear to your hearts. Cleveland and New York right now. The Cleveland Guardians are coming in as the minus 126 money line favorites here behind Shane Bieber. Yankees Schmidt plus 108 at home. 7.5 is the total for this game. Like right off the bat, like I said, there's a batch of storms and rain clouds sitting over the stadium. It doesn't look like they move either, which is the problem. So do you think that they play this game? It does feel like they could try making it up, or do they wait it out and try to play after?
I think they try to wait it out most likely. They have a travel day tomorrow, so I guess they could wait it out potentially and just use the travel day to play the game. Um, I don't know. I'm kind of 50-50 on this one. I will say I would have really liked Bats here. I think Bats could have got to Schmidt pretty easily. Schmidt's only upside is that he has a lot of strikeout potential, but when that strikeout potential isn't able to come through, he has the highest weighted on base average allowed out of any pitcher on this slate. So I think there is a ton of upside for this Cleveland stack. It's just, is the rain going to cooperate? It's 2 p.m. right now, right? We have 4 hours until game time. I can tell you things that I think are going to happen. There's going to be a lot of storms at the beginning of this game. They could wait it out and play through the rain throughout the rest of the night. But at the end of the day, we're not going to know. This weather changes so much. It's so volatile. It can change at a drop of a hat. And so maybe we end up seeing improvement on this. If we do, I think I'll have a lot of interest in this Cleveland team. But if we don't, then I think I'm fine to stay away. Disappointing a little bit to stay away, but I think I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think that's where I lean as well. You never really know. I mean, this could clear up in an hour, and we'll have a brand new take on this entire game itself. So I also had, as much as Shane Bieber has been hit and miss, and as much as the Yankees lineup has been full of the guys that you normally wouldn't see in there. I at least wanted to highlight the BVP for Gleyber Torres. Definitely a step in the right direction there, hitting 500 against him. So there was that. I know Volpe hit a home run last night. I don't know. Would have been able to attack Shane Bieber too, because he has not yet turned it around to start this season.
Yeah, certainly hasn't. Could have been a spot to potentially attack, but I think it's better to stay away from pitching for sure. Only thing I'd be willing to take is hitters, and that is mostly a Cleveland situation for me. Would have really liked Jose Ramirez in this one. Kwan, any lefty would have been in a good spot against Schmidt. The weighted on base average he's giving up against lefties is tremendous right now, and as long as you don't strike out against him, you should be able to get hits, and that's kind of the MO of this Cleveland team anyway. So would have been really fun to play this team, but I don't think we're going to be able to tonight.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next game. Another 7:05 game, Chicago, Washington. Right now, the Cubs are coming in as a minus 198 road favorite here behind Stroman. Nationals, Irvin, plus 166 at home. Total is 8 here. The weather for this game going to be more of the same, although I do think that at least we can say here, and again, take this with a grain of salt because Nationals ground crew sucks. There's a massive batch of storms. Looks like they're going to be moving out around 7:30, 8 o'clock Eastern. Maybe they end up waiting this thing out and playing. So I don't know. That's the most optimistic I'm going to be about this. And I know we've already seen them. Cancel in situations that are way, way, way less than this. So, what's your take on this one? It looks like we should be able to get a game in here.
I really like this Cubs stack. I think you're getting
Yeah.
close to one of the top stacks on the slate at the end of the day. This guy, Jake Irvin, coming up from AAA, only been a pitcher since 2018, only got into AAA this year, so only had 2 starts at the AAA level. Most of his starts are at the single A level or at the AA level. His AA numbers aren't that impressive, 4.79 ERA, 4.17 xFIP, but he's been getting lit up in AAA this year. Through 5 starts, he has a 5.3 xFIP, a 1.2 home run per 9. The 1.2 home run per 9 isn't bad, but it's definitely not good enough when you're in AAA, and now you're facing off against a Cubs team that has some good hitters, man. They've been way better than I think anyone really expected at this point in the season.
Yes.
They have the 4th best batting average against right-handed pitching. They have the 8th best weighted runs created above average against right-handed pitching. So it all starts out with our guy that we've been talking about a ton to start out the year. Cody Bellinger seems like a guy that I want to lock into this spot. Had another good game yesterday. Nothing tremendous, but a double. He's still seeing the ball incredibly well. Extends his hit streak to 5 games now. I'm really interested in this Cody Bellinger spot. I think it's one of the better spots that you're going to get on the slate today, even if you do have to pay up for it. And then I kind of just want as many bats as I can possibly get from this team. I think that Ian Happ deserves some love here. I think there's some potential for a Dansby Swanson play. Patrick Wisdom is a guy that I could really look at today. At the end of the day, I don't think Jake Irvin's very good. So I'm excited to get some bats here from this Cubs team. And I think you could potentially talk about this team being a full stack.
Yeah, I really like the Cubs. Again, I really hope that they are not going to be stupid with this field. But it looks really solid, right? Like we know that if they put the tarp on, they take it off around 7, should be able to play. It might be a little bit later on the East Coast, but still should be able to get through this one. So I really do think that this pitcher is out there, Irvin's out there, because Washington has nothing to lose. And so they're going to give guys opportunities. And that's a huge, huge red flag to jump from single A to the majors. And like that doesn't happen, even if you're Aaron Judge, right? So
Yeah.
Also, like a pitcher from 2018, people don't really remember how long usually prospects take to get up to a certain level. We're just used to seeing the Adleys, the Judges, the Acuñas. So yeah, I think this is a spot where you can definitely attack them with some major league bats. One more note on Cody Bellinger here. According to the hits, runs, RBIs model, he has hit 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs, which is both props on Underdog and Prize Picks today. 9 out of the last 10 games, including last night. And so maybe it wasn't a best night for him, but yeah, he's in a massive spot today. I think that this is one of the better props on the slate for the entire night.
I completely agree. I'm right there with you, man.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on. I guess how many guys would you limit yourself to if you had to choose? Because we do have cores to talk about again.
Probably 2 to 3, most likely, is where I'd lean. It's going to be interesting to see how that core stuff works out because I'm excited to talk about it with you. But I think 2 to 3 is where I would lean.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. All right. Other side here, Stroman gets the bump for the Chicago Cubs. He's had a really, really good start to the season. And so I guess the main thing here is that he's definitely more, if we're talking DFS, he's definitely not the best DFS pitcher. I know he's shown upside, but historically, it just hasn't gone that way for him. We already know that this Washington team doesn't strike out that much. And so if we already have a guy that doesn't really, he's more of a ground ball contact, just really efficient pro pitcher here. I don't think he's playable as an SP1 just because of the lack of strikeouts. But is this something where we might just, end up fading this whole Washington side because of that?
Yeah, for sure. Not interested in Washington. Collectively, they almost have a 50% ground ball rate. We know that's where Stroman really thrives. I think this is a spot where over on prop sites, I'm willing to take a number like hits allowed because I think Stroman has a really efficient outing. I don't think it's necessarily a strikeout outing. I don't think it's a good outing for him in that aspect or a DFS aspect, but I think in terms of, him being really proficient, having a really good pitching outing, that's definitely possible and looks like what he's going to do today. So 5.5 hits allowed is the line right now. I really like the under there. Just to go over to props really quickly, I think that's where you kind of get your bread and butter here with this Stroman play. But I don't think you play him on DFS fights, especially when he's priced up like 10,500. It just seems like way too much.
Yep, definitely agree there. All right. Let's go ahead and move on here. Is there anything else prop related that you want to talk about outside of Bellinger?
I just wanted to look at Cubs props. So, I mean, you
Sure.
mentioned the Bellinger 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs. I'm cool with that. Hap has a 7 hitter fantasy score. I'm very cool with that. I like that a lot. Nico Hoyner with a 7 hitter fantasy score, and he has the steal potential.
Yeah.
One thing that we kind of dived into a little bit to start out the year, but haven't talked about too in depth, is that these guys coming up from the minor leagues don't know what it's like to pitch with these new base paths, with these new base pads, with the new steal era that we're in with the MLB. So these guys that have speed, like Nico Hoyner, have a lot of upside, especially in this type of spot. So really like his hitter fantasy score there. Really like Bellinger's prop. I like Hap's prop, and don't even mind going Swanson's hitter fantasy score as well. I think you kind of have prop central here with the Cubs, and all of it I really like.
Yep, definitely. If Coors was not on this slate, would this be our number one team stack?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. Good to know there. Let's move on and talk about the next window of games here at 7:10. Toronto and Boston is going to be first. Right now, the Toronto Blue Jays are coming in as a minus 142 road favorite behind Alek Manoah. Nick Pivetta, Red Sox plus 120 at home. 9.5 is the total here. This is going to represent the highest game total outside of Coors today. And for good reason. Normally, when you're in Boston, these things tend to happen. But today, at least 52 degrees at Fenway. Wind is blowing in from right center at 8 to 10 miles an hour. There's a little rain, but it should be passing before this game starts. So I would assume, at the worst case scenario, they'll late start it, but they'll have the tarp on until game time. So that's what that is there. Let's talk about these Blue Jays going up against Nick Pivetta. Not the same historic data against Corey Kluber, but I do think that there are some hitters that you can at least look at that have been hot recently that we can target and talk about.
And you still have some good BVP data here. Like I thought that's what you're going to
Yeah,
hit me with to start out,
yeah,
but
yeah.
like
No, it's still solid. It's just not levels of yesterday, right?
yeah, for sure. But Bo Bichette coming in with 10 for 24 and 2 home
Mhm.
runs. I just in general, he's been red hot recently. He had that big
Yep.
home run. He had that big game where he had 5 hits against Boston, then the 460 monster home run that he had against Seattle. He's just seeing the ball really well right now, in my opinion. So really like the upside that Bo Bichette carries. If Kevon Biggio makes the lineup, I would have some interest there. I don't even mind Vlad, who isn't hitting all that well against him, but has 2 home runs against him in 22 at bats. So I see some upside to this Toronto team. They are some very expensive price tags. So I think you're really making the decision of are you going to play Toronto or are you going to load up on Coors? I think there's reasons to believe that Toronto's that better stack with it being Fenway, with it still having really good park factors. The weather concerns me a little bit though. I think winds are blowing in this one, like not too much, but
Yep.
around 10 miles an hour. And
It's 10.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, and then you also have you. What else was I going to say? Oh, it's cold here too. It's like 50 degrees, which is pretty chilly in all
Mhm.
honesty. So,
Well, we'll talk
um,
about Coors. It's a lot hotter there today.
yeah, it's hot in Coors. It's hot in Kansas City as well. So we'll get to the Baltimore stacks too, and the Kansas City side as well. But I think there's definitely upside to this Toronto team. I don't think I put them inside my top 3. I think I do put them inside my top 5 though.
Yeah, we also know that Pavetta has tendencies to get shelled whenever he starts to unravel. Um, yeah, I think that's where I want to just kind of leave that. He's not really a ground ball pitcher, so if these balls are sent in the air, maybe the wind holds some of it in. But again, the wind is coming in from right, which is where the short porch stuff is. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see something still fly over there. The end of the day, though, like you say a lot, this Blue Jays team has a lot of guys that can just um, you know, develop their own hard contact in these scenarios. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of where I would say Easily top five. I'm saying probably 4 or 5 in terms of most important teams.
Yeah, I think they're a solid stack for sure. It's are you going to be willing to pay these price tags is the real question.
Right, exactly. On the other side, we have this Manoah spot going up against the Boston Red Sox. Manoah's xFIP, obviously not ideal to start the year, 6.15. Strikeout rates down, walk rates way up. The hard contact to lefties has been pretty atrocious in a big sample size. I don't know. ISO's still pretty well in check. I know he's been not as good to start the season, but I don't really see a way that I'm really engaged in Boston bats today, honestly.
I at least have some interest, man. Like I think Manoa's fallen off a cliff a little bit. I mean, nothing is showing that this is going to change either. The BABIP is right around league average right now. The swinging strike rate is at 10%, which means his 19% K rate pretty much checks out as what he's going to be at with that type of swinging strike rate. Just nothing's really working for him at this point. So I would like to get some lefties here. It's a question of who. Like Verdugo has had some decent at bats against him. I wouldn't mind going there. Yoshida is someone that I think could potentially be an option since he's been just red hot as of recent. Been on base in each of the last like 13 games at this point. So don't mind going to Yoshida. Devers, I know hasn't been doing all that well against Manoah specifically, but I think this could be a spot where you see some improvement on that BVP number. And even Jalen Duran, who came up to this team, was
Yeah.
kind of injured, was a big bat, or Jaren Duran, sorry, not Jalen. Jaren Duran, really solid bat, has been very good for this team in the 5-hole. And I know you have to pay some really expensive price tags for this Boston team, but all of these lefties check out as good lefties. And I could very well see a stack of them working out really well for you today.
I'm okay with Verdugo. I think Masataka also provides something there as well. Like consistency, I guess, is a better way to say it. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, outside of the one time where he really got shelled against Tampa, he's only given up more than 3 earned runs once, and that was on opening day. So I don't know. I feel like they could small ball him, which could be a thing. I am very concerned about the walks. So if he is in a spot where he's had 6 starts for the season so far, and in 4 of those he's had 4 or more walks. Those are glaring numbers. So I could see that be a reason. Again, maybe the small ball piece is what we're looking for here. Maybe a guy like Verdugo gets walked and steals, and Masataka hits him in. Like those are the things that you'd want to look for there.
Yeah. Yoshida 6.5 hitter fantasy score over on Prize Picks. I really like that number. I like
Okay.
Verdugo 7.5
Yeah.
too. I think both of those are solid. Even Durant's hits, runs, RBIs number is something that I would consider. So I like this stack. I think it's solid. I don't think I put them above the Blue Jays, but I think they are good.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. But at least they're cheaper. Where is this? I wish I could sort this right now. Sorry, I'm looking for a Duran hits, runs, RBIs number. Is it there? Otherwise, then I wouldn't. I know I've typed it in my model like 3 times this week. So if there's nothing there, then I'm just talking for no reason. But I know that he's been really, really consistent in that category.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's go ahead and move on here to the next game. Minnesota Chicago is next. AL Central stuff. Right now, the Twins are coming in as a plus 106 underdog on the road behind Varland. Dylan Cease, White Sox minus 124 at home. 8 is the total here. For the weather, cold in Chicago, 48 degrees. The wind is blowing in from left, 9 to 10 miles an hour. So a pitcher-friendly park becomes even more pitcher-friendly. Bad for these bats here. We have yet to really discuss any pitchers on this slate. And we talked pre-show, so I kind of feel like I know where you're going with this. But how much is Dylan Cease on your radar today?
100%. I love this spot for Cease. He has consistently done really well against this Minnesota team in the past. When you look at overall pitcher versus batters numbers, he's faced off against this White Sox team or against this Minnesota team 117 times, given up a 188 average, has 38 strikeouts. So his K rate's checking out to around above 20%. Below a 188 average is really solid. We just saw this Minnesota team kind of falter yesterday, so they don't look like they're fully into it right now. And I could just see lots of strikeouts for him. It's a good ballpark as well for Cease. And really, the big thing for me is that you look at how he's done so far this year, and if you took out those last two starts against the Rays, this looks a lot more impressive, right? And these are some tough teams that he faced before the Rays, but I think the Rays are just above all really good. And he had to face off against them twice in a row. Like, that's never going to work out well for you. But if you go back to those other numbers, he's done really well in this spot. He even faced off against this Minnesota team and did well earlier on in the year. I think he has the ability to go 6 innings plus. I really like this C spot. I think he's top pitcher of the day, point per dollar wise. I know we're going to talk about Ohtani against that St. Louis team, but Cease checks out as my top player.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think he had gone through the ringer with Tampa. Never really liked to face the same team in 5 days, and that ended up kicking his ass on that day. So I do think that you can look at the Minnesota spot in the previous outing and feel more comfortable about it. Now he's going to be home against a pitcher where, we'll talk about the other side. I think Cease should be a little bit bigger of a favorite here. So I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of hesitancy from the books to kind of give him more on the money line, but I do think that he can start to turn things around here. It's not really normal for him to go 6 starts with only 2 quality starts, so I do think today can be that day.
Yep, for sure.
All right, let's go ahead and focus on this other side here and talk about these Chicago White Sox bats and Louis Varland. What can we talk about for Varland, and how should, we're trying to find spots where Chicago can score some runs. Is this going to be the day for that?
No, I don't think so. Well, I don't think a lot of runs. I think they can score against Varland, but I will say Varland on the other side, respectable pitcher, man. I know he had a bad year in the majors last year, but this is a prospect. Back in, I think 2021, they ranked him as like a top 100 prospect. So this is a good prospect, and we're expecting this K stuff to see from him. He showed it in the minor leagues so far in AAA this season because he got recalled for this start. But in the minor leagues, 15 innings pitched, 15 Ks per 9. His ERA is at 4.2, but his xFIP is at 1.91, mostly relying on that K rate being so solid. So I know the Yankee start looks a little bit like a fallacy, but like I think it is in line of what you can expect. A lot of strikeouts out of this guy, some top end stuff that will look really good against some of the heavier K guys on this White Sox team. I think they do end up getting to him. I think some of these batters just have to. But I don't think he'll give up a ton of damage. And so I'm not really interested in these White Sox bats.
Yeah, I'm never really interested in anything related to the White Sox anyway. But
Yeah.
I do think that, yeah, you're right. I mean, maybe we do have to take a look at Varland in more of a smaller sample than what we used to think about him in the past. So I think it's honestly just Cease. And I guess if you really wanted to get creative, I don't know. I still feel like it's a pretty juicy price tag on DraftKings. I wouldn't play both because obviously only one pitcher can get the win, and maybe even 0 at that point. But we do need to talk about SP2s today, so maybe we touch base on those when we see them.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on here. Talk about the next game, which is going to be Baltimore and Kansas City. Right now, the Baltimore Orioles are coming in as a minus 164 favorite behind Kyle Gibson. Royals at home plus 138 behind Zach Greinke. 9 is the total here, and the weather 70 degrees, like we mentioned earlier. Wind is blowing out slightly, might not even mean anything. It's less than 5 miles an hour, but still is a really warm day considering all the rest of the games on the slate. And so the first thing that I wanted to touch on, we talked a little bit pre-show, talked about how some of those Baltimore bats struggled against Ryan Yarbrough historically yesterday. That proved to not be the case. Now you have this spot where Baltimore's going to come in with a pretty high implied team total. We know that Greinke has reverse splits tendencies in his history. I don't really know it because it definitely feels like it could be a troll spot.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like it could be a troll spot. I could also see Baltimore just taking it to him. How it's been so far this year was that the reverse split tendencies are still somewhat there, but at the end of the day, he's giving up too much hard contact to both sides for it to truly be there. So these lefties are getting a hold of him. if there's guys that are left-handed hitters that aren't going to hit the ball on the ground a ton, I think they should do well here. So that qualifies as Santander, who has a 26% ground ball rate, Gunnar Henderson at 37%, Adley Rutschman at 25%. Like, these guys who are consistently hitting the ball in the air are going to do relatively well against Greinke. So I like these lefty hitters. I'm less on the Mullins of the world, who you're going to have to pay up a tremendous amount for. But Adley at 3.3 makes a lot of sense on FanDuel. Santander below 3K makes a lot of sense on FanDuel. Gunnar Henderson all the way down at 2,500. I like these Baltimore bats, man. I think these are potentially some of the bats that can save you some money today, even if you just go with a mini stack like Santander and potentially Gunnar Henderson.
Right. Yeah. Then you get to the GPP side of things, where I do think that Mullins is in play in terms of just fantasy score. Might not make a DFS build. And this guy will definitely not make a DFS build because of how expensive he is. But Jorge Mateo, coming out of nowhere this season, or just turning it on, and hitting safely now in 8 straight games with multiple extra base hits and big home runs. He's all the way up at 4,300 on FanDuel, and a spot on DraftKings where definitely a little, not as much, but still you're taking a big risk fading some of these guys in cores to play this guy. But I still think that you should be scared of most of the bats in this Baltimore lineup. I think you either truly, like, there's really no sitting on the fence for this stack. You either really like it or you really don't.
Yeah, I would agree.
But I do agree that you're probably searching in DFS for price hunting kind of scenarios. So that does take out Mateo. It does take out Mullins, and I think that you're still able to get really good value everywhere else. This is probably like you said, the only one of the top teams that you can get value on today.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, props. Or I guess we could talk about Kyle Gibson on the other side. We'll talk about that first, and then we can focus on props for this game in general. Kyle Gibson, not the start that we wanted against, I believe, Detroit last time out, and whoever it was, he still didn't perform well. 4.76 xFIP though. To start the season this year, 19% strikeout rate. The ground ball stuff's really working for him, so that could be a benefit here today. But do you see any scenarios where maybe we are interested in some Royals?
Just one. Vinny Pasquantino profiles really well here. You got to find guys that are willing to or going to create their own hard contact against him, because he's not giving up high hard contact numbers. Vinny's been that guy this year. 50% hard contact rate against righties to start out the season. This is a very talented hitter, very Freddie Freeman-esque type hitter. So I think Vinny is a good spot here. It's really just a one-off scenario, though, and that's about it. I'm not interested in much else.
Yep, agreed. I know that Gibson has some interesting blow-up potential, but not really seeing it in this spot all the way around. So let's go ahead and move on and talk about props for this game, more so just Orioles in general. Right now, you're getting an Adley fantasy number on Underdog that looks pretty good at 8.5. It's probably a little bit less on Prize Picks. Yep, 7.5 because of the walk stuff and stolen base stuff. But are you liking anything else for these Orioles?
On the Prize Pick side of things, I think that, the Gunnar Henderson 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs, Adley 7.5 hitter fantasy score, both of those numbers make sense. I'm behind both of those. Outside of that, I don't see much else that I want. Don't want righty props. I guess Mullins is okay, but it's just not great.
Yeah, I'm okay with that as well. So I'm okay to move on here. Let's go ahead and discuss the next game, which is going to be LA and St. Louis. Right now, the Angels are sitting in as a minus 134 road favorite here behind Shohei Ohtani, who's going to be the top overall pitcher of the slate in terms of price. And then you have the Cardinals as a plus 114 underdog behind Miles Mikolas. 7.5 is the total. Has some feeling of a pitcher duel to an extent. 67 degrees, wind's not really a factor here. Mikolas has turned it around, and ironically, right around the same time that I probably talked shit about him. So that's kind of where things usually turn around for people. But really good outing against San Francisco. And how are we expecting the Angels? We'll start there first. Angels bats against Mikolas today.
Yeah, I think that some of these, man, I would like to say some of these lefties, but there's not really many lefties in the projected order anyway. I guess Shohei's in there, but you're not going to be able to play him as a bat because of the fact that he's pitching today. So um, I don't know. I guess you could take the Trouts of the world, but you're probably wasting your money where you could be spending up on Coors or most likely spending up on Toronto, actually.
Yeah, I could actually see Mikolas not having a great fantasy outing, but just getting the job done.
I agree.
That's kind of it. I mean, he's going to be inducing ground balls to righties, and the majority of the team, probably 7 bats, are going to be right-handed. So you'll see Luis Rengifo hit from the other side, so maybe it's 6. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of just meh. Where yesterday I had a lot more interest in a righty-heavy platoon spot against Steven Matz that worked out for us.
Yeah, they didn't even get Rengifo into the lineup. We just got it. They didn't get a
Oh,
single lefty into the lineup, actually. Fun fact. Full righty outside of Otani, obviously. So tough.
all right then. Never mind. So anyway, though, I think that you can. Well, let's focus on the other side and talk about Shohei here. Is the spot as advertised? Meaning, is he gonna do well again? Which I don't know. I'll let you say your piece on that.
I don't think so, man. I think this walk rate is getting more and more concerning as it goes on. You know, the fact that his walk rate's up to 13% is insanely high. It's what's keeping this XFIP from going way above what it should be or going below what it should be. You know, we saw his XFIP in the threes last year, sometimes in the twos, but he's just walking too many guys. And that's going to be a big problem against this St. Louis team where they do have some guys that can really get good walks. You know, Nootbaar being one of them at the top of the lineup. 20% walk rate against righties so far this year is insane. Goldschmidt at 15%, Gorman at 13%, Contreras at 10%. Like these guys are seeing the ball extremely well, and that could be a big issue for Shohei today. So I think it could be a good start. You know, he could do 6 innings, 8 strikeouts, but could end up having 2 earned runs or could end up wasting the gas tank away a little bit on some of these walks, and that could prevent him from having that really big start. So I think I'm most likely going to try to stay away from this spot. I think that if everyone goes here, I'm happy to stay away from it.
Yeah, I think everybody's. I guess. I mean, if we look at just Cease versus Otani side by side, we'll talk about Logan Gilbert too, but it does feel like people, to your point, will gravitate towards playing Shohei. Feels very Garrett Cole-esque to a certain extent,
Yeah.
where you're just paying up for it, right? So again, I think it's the wrong move. Again, we were while we missed the strikeout prop by 1, which was tilting because it was just one of those scenarios. But he still didn't hit value yesterday, so I think something similar applies here. And I will again. I was right on the Cincinnati win last night. I'm gonna go ahead and say St. Louis wins tonight too, and he doesn't get that win today.
Yeah, I could see that definitely happening.
All right. Not gonna play St. Louis bats though, or interested in them. I would be interested to see where Shohei's fantasy number is for pitching. 37.5. I don't know. I'm not that bold. I think he can get into the low 40s.
I mean, it's crazy that, you know, with the price discrepancy that we have, Cease has a higher pitcher fantasy score line than Otani does over on Prize Picks. Kind of gives you an
That's a good
idea of
indicator.
yeah, it's a very good indicator. So they have Cease right now lined at 38.5. So yeah, I'm fine with staying away from that Otani number. I think they priced it correctly considering the conditions and considering the walk rate and stuff.
All right. Nothing else though here. I'm honestly fine with a full fade in this spot. But you're gonna have to sweat out in DFS the Otani stuff as normal, like you do every single time if you're not playing them. So let's go ahead and move on. We can talk about cores here next. Milwaukee and Colorado. Right now the Brewers are a -116 favorite behind Eric Lauer. Kyle Freeland, the -102 moneyline underdog. 12 is the total. The weather is a lot nicer today. 73 degrees. The wind is blowing in from left, which is concerning for both offenses, considering that both pitchers are southpaws. A massive letdown spot last night on either side. And, like we mentioned at the top of the show, we're going to have to go right back to it or at least discuss it as some of the top options.
Yeah, you're gonna have to. I mean, Vegas gave us these implied totals, so you're kind of forced to talk about it. I want to talk about the Milwaukee side first. This has been a team that has not been good against left-handed pitching this year, so it gets even more scary when Freeland is on the mound. But they are showing some signs of improvement. We've seen that the expected WOBA for these guys are really high, so maybe they're getting into some unlucky spots here. I don't mind Willy Adames. I don't mind Contreras. I think both of them are solid options. I am somewhat hesitant to go to much of this lineup. I think Joey Weimer at the bottom too. Really good bat. He's been great against lefties this year, but I don't think you need to be overexposed to Milwaukee today.
No, but I could also see some of them doing really well. I, I mean, I think I'm okay with fading. Well, I have to see their lineup. If we don't have it yet, I would assume that they probably try to lead off with Brosio. That hasn't really worked out for them this year. And I don't, I feel like they'd be a little bit foolish to do it again. But who knows there. I just think that I'm willing to still go back to the well on Willy Adames. I still think that William Contreras is a good bat. And I guess it just depends on what they see everywhere else. Maybe I think we should still get Tyrone Taylor at the bottom of the lineup next to Riemer. So maybe you can get a little bit of a salary relief with those guys. But I still think that some of these Brewers bats are in play.
Just a little reminder, part factor only goes so far for you, right? Like at the end of the day, you still have to hit the ball. And
Sure.
this Milwaukee team is the second worst in the league when it comes to facing off against left-handed pitchers. The team that's the worst in the league against left-handed pitchers is this Rockies team on the other side. So this is not setting up well for either team in terms of the starters. Now maybe they end up getting to the bullpen and stuff, but I could also just see an extremely low-scoring, surprising game from this one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, well, it would be very similar to last night. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that is what it is there. I guess the only hope there for the Brewers then would be that the Rockies just don't have a lefty to bring in with them. I'd be
Yeah.
curious to see if they used a lefty last night in their bullpen session. But yeah, the other side, Eric Lauer has not had a great start to the season. 5.43 xFIP, 20% K rates, mostly to righties. Definitely a fly ball pitcher, more so this year. I know he's giving lefties a ground ball rate of 41%, but you can still attack this guy with right-handed bats. And I'm just going to contradict myself right away and lead off this conversation with the fact that Charlie Blackmon has a 3% K rate and 30 plate appearances to lefties, and everything looks pretty solid for him. I know he's not really generating hard contact against lefties, but he is seeing Eric Lauer very well, and that's my BVP play of the day for free there. And I think that he's hitting in 500 in the course of history here, 12 for 24, as these guys used to face off against each other a lot in the past. 7 singles, 3 doubles, 2 home runs. So there's enough there to tell me that at least I'm quite interested, and maybe we talk about that more for props. But what are you seeing for the Rockies here in terms of the guys that are best suited against lefties?
Yeah, in terms of the guys that are best suited, it comes from the heart of this lineup. Chris Bryant and CJ Crone both have really good expected weighted on base averages. Bryant's had most of his hard contact or most of his extra base hits against lefties this season. So I think both of them are solid and guys that I'm willing to go to. Outside of that, I think this lineup is very uninspiring. And it kind of makes this spot uninspiring even for those two because with the price tags that they're at, you've got to rely on some RBIs for sure. And I'm just not sure they'll be in many positions where, a solo shot will help him out in that category. But I'm not sure many guys are going to get on base around him. I know Lauer hasn't been the best this year, but at the end of the day, with this Rockies team just being so bad against lefties, it's hard to see that turning around.
Yeah, it is. Maybe turning around comes with more Randall Grichuk in the lineup now that he's back. He is hitting 6th today, which I kind of wish was a little bit higher. I know they really wouldn't be in a place to put him higher, but at least he's cheap on the DFS sites. So I know that we don't have much of a sample size there, but I don't mind Randall Grichuk either.
Rockies did not pitch a lefty yesterday out of the bullpen, and they have 2 waiting today. So potential to see some lefties out of the bullpen from them as well.
Interesting. It's really ironic there too is like through 2 waves of batters for the Brewers, it was the 6th inning, and I think they only really had anything from Rowdy Tellez of all people. So
Yeah.
that was the irony of yesterday. We'll
Mm-hmm.
see if it kind of pans out today in the way that Vegas is expecting. I would assume I'll be on the side of saying this game goes under as well, but I do think that you still need exposure where you can.
Yeah, I think you do need some exposure. I'm just not going to be saying it's going to be full stacks like some of these other stacks that we've talked about on the slate.
Brewers props here. Weimer's got a 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs. I don't mind William Contreras total bases. The Willie fantasy score actually went up from yesterday too. I don't know. I'm waiting to see it turn around, and I guess that's just the biggest thing we're waiting on right now for this team.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
they even got slaughtered by Jose Suarez in Miller Park on Sunday.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like that's all you need to know. Like a lefty against the Brewers, it just blanked him, 2-hitter.
Yeah, exactly. I think Willie Adames is fine. I think William Contreras' 1.5 total bases is totally okay. Joey Weimer's 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs is solid, but wouldn't go much past that.
On the Rockies side, Crone and Bryant have fantasy numbers of 8 that are interesting. I've already talked about the Blackman stuff. I think that if he's able to get on, he's a steal candidate today. 8 hitter fantasy score, like all these guys at the top of the lineup have the same thing. So I can get behind it, those 3 specifically.
Yeah, I think those are solid.
All right. But yeah, cores, we're going to be on the side of it not being as good as it should be today. So we'll see how everybody kind of reacts to that. But let's go ahead and move on to the last game of the slate. It has some weather as well. The irony of being in Oakland for that. Seattle and Oakland is the last game. Mariners minus 186 behind Logan Gilbert. JP Sears, Athletics plus 156 at home. 7.5 is the total for this game. Wind blowing out here, but like I said, there is rain risk, storm risk throughout the entirety of this game. So I would say we would have interest in Logan Gilbert and really not much else. Maybe some Seattle righties like Ty France or Julio or maybe even Suarez, but I don't know what to do with this. It feels like you're taking a pretty massive risk when you have better bats and better pitchers staring at you in the other early games.
Yeah, the big thing is that you're kind of going to be left on an island if you go to this one. I think it's great to attack for tournaments, but at the end of the day, this game starts at 9:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Closest game to it is the 8:40 p.m. Coors game that we talked about. So if it does end up getting rained out, which there is potential, there's thunderstorms around this one. So I don't think it's impossible to say that this one gets rained out, especially because it's Oakland. They're not very used to rain out there. So I don't know how this ground cruise usually performs, but I can't imagine they're going to do all that well. They're not going to be up there with like the Rockies situation. They're going to be closer to that Washington situation when it comes to their grounds crews. So I don't know. Maybe you go here, but I think, like I said, you're taking a huge risk considering the rain stuff. I will say Logan Gilbert's in a great spot here. He could really finesse some of that K stuff against this Oakland team and really flex some high upside. Again, especially with the pitcher, the rain stuff could really end up screwing you over.
Yeah, I would be. You know what I would be interested in? Can we just shift over to props right away?
Yeah, go for it.
I would be interested in trying to find a pitcher strikeout number if we can look at like the first couple innings. Is that something we can take a look at?
Gilbert, MLB Live.
I'm not sure if he'll have it, but
3.5 pitcher strikeouts for first 3 innings.
First 3? Oh, kind of like that, actually.
Yeah, that's solid. I think that's good.
Because, again, I don't know if you want to go all the way up at 6.5 on the straight MLB category, just because of a delay that could come up and take him out of the game. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm leaning with that.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I think that's solid.
Not the best, obviously, but I don't know. I mean, if Logan Gilbert was in a spot where we knew he'd go the full distance here, where would he rank on today's pitcher chart? Because I think that we're done with the slate, so we can kind of just wrap things up here. I know that we have the fan favorite Notani, where we see the industry going today, and then you have Dylan Cease. I feel like people, I don't know, either you're going to really look into this or you're going to completely overlook it just based on what Minnesota did yesterday. So I don't know. I mean, not Minnesota, what they did yesterday, but over the weekend, I should say. So there only seems like 2 or 3 options today.
Yeah, definitely. Doesn't seem like I think in terms of where I'd rank him, he'd probably still be behind Cease, but he'd be a clear number 2. I would feel really good about it, the spot overall. So I think it is a good spot for him. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think it's the top spot.
All right. Well, let's wrap this thing up. I appreciate everybody hanging out, and make sure to give the stream a like and a subscribe to the channel. We're going to be here, obviously, every single day of the MLB season at 3 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. Josh, anything else you want to add in terms of top stacks or just a take on the slate? Is it do we have to give ourselves like a massive leverage play of the day, or I feel like we're going to be playing Otani on DraftKings if we're not going to be able to play Logan Gilbert?
Yeah, I don't think so. So the reason why I say I don't think so, I think you can go Louis Varland as your SP2 potentially over there, and I wouldn't feel all that bad about it. Um, I think there are other options than Otani, is what I'm trying to say. I don't think because like I would like to be bat focused on this slate as much as I possibly can be. I think that's where I'm gearing towards, and because I like Toronto bats a ton and they're expensive. I like Boston bats; they're expensive. I like Baltimore bats; they're not expensive. But I think you do need to get a piece of cores. So like I I don't want to overpay for pitcher today is my main thing. And especially if I don't think they're going to come through for me, which I feel like Otani definitely might not come through for you today. So that's where I'm leaning for that. Top stacks. Actually, before that, housekeeping stuff. You said 3 p.m. Eastern every day. Tomorrow's going to be an exception to that. We have
Yeah.
a bunch of early games on the docket, most likely going to be an early main slate for those who are here. So if you're coming to join us tomorrow, just know that we'll be going live. I don't think we're sure on the time yet, but we'll put out some more information once we know exactly when that slate time is going to start. And you can see us here in the morning. Come drink a coffee and enjoy the show. And in terms of top stacks, I am going to go with man, I've been kind of going back and forth with who I want my top stack to be, but I think I am. And a team that I didn't even mention in that whole spiel, I do like Cubs a lot, so I think I'm going to lean Cubs number
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
I will lean Milwaukee number two, though they're a very hesitant number two. Baltimore number three for savings, Toronto number four, and Boston number five. I think Colorado has to fall out of your top five today. They've been that bad against lefties.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that just because Blackman has good BVP doesn't mean the whole team's going to be successful. So
For sure.
that's kind of how that runs there. And speaking of coffee, and we'll get out of here now. I was so excited because I knew I was up late last night watching your Lakers play,
Oh,
and I went to the store. We've talked in the past. I'm moving, so a bunch of stuff is on my mind, and I totally blindly grabbed a box of coffee, and then I put it in. I didn't even look at it, and I put it away, and then I went in this morning and went to go make my coffee. I have a K-cup thing for the time being because I packed away my coffee maker, and I bought a decaf cup of a
no.
decaf box.
So
So
we
that's
could talk a little
that's
bit.
the worst feeling in the
We could.
world. I'm totally tired right now, so yeah,
Yeah,
that's where I'm at.
I bet we could talk a little bit here. I actually had this discussion. We got 10 minutes for the show, so like we got plenty of time right now. We started on time and stuff. Um, I'm just like completely against decaf coffee, and my buddies bought some decaf coffee. They were saying, "Oh, sometimes you want the taste of coffee, but like you don't want to get all jittery and caffeined up." And I was like,
No, you don't.
I first of all, I don't really. I mean, like coffee is very much like beer for me, where like it's good for its purpose, but it's not like the best tasting thing ever. Coffee is good for its purpose. Coffee's good to wake me up in the morning, and I'm not thrilled about the taste of it, but I like it for its use.
I'm a little bit on the more. I think they're good tasting as well,
Oh, okay,
but at the same time, I can't drink decaf if it's
yeah,
not gonna. I'm more on the side of what I might as well just take a shower and drink like 3 cups of water
yeah,
instead of
for
going with
sure.
decaf. So that made me really upset. Now I have to go back out to the store probably tonight. I'm not happy about it, but here
Bro,
we
did you
are.
buy like a big box? Because like some they come in like the
No, no,
small.
no, just
Oh,
a
okay.
small 10, 12 thing.
Oh, okay.
But
I thought you maybe
cool.
bought like 100 pack of
Oh
those
no,
coffee, and I was like,
I
that's
would return
terrible.
it.
For sure.
Yeah, I would
Okay.
return it.
Lou asked any home run calls today, fellas. I'm gonna post my article. I'm a little bit late. Had some stuff going on with the apartment this morning, so I will be posting my home run article soon. But if I was going to bank on one guy, it would probably end up being Bo Bichette.
I'll say one guy that already homered that I had exposure to this morning in the BVP article was Javi Baez, and then today we'll go with Santander. I'm
I
willing
like
to
it.
bank on him getting there in that spot against Greinke.
Hell yeah. All right, let's get out of here. Thank you all for listening. As always, my name is Joshua Riemer. Good night and good skill.